Friends, I must tell you, I know the place to go if you need house audio, TV installation, security monitoring. I am telling you, these people are so good that I cannot wait to share them with you. AVS Concepts is the place to get all of these things taken care of. They're the experts in audio video. If you are entertaining and you need music, call them. If you just purchased a new house and you want to have security, you've got to call them. They are the best at all of this for you. I am so excited to share them with you. They are new sponsors for the podcast. You will not regret having them in your house. They can put anything up and create the most amazing surround sound. I am telling you, when I watch my movies, I like to watch them with surround sound. And thanks to AVS Concepts, I can do that. Follow them at their Instagram account, AVSC_HTX, or you can also find them at their website, avcschouston.com, and tell them that Alicia from Vines by Alicia sent you, and they will take care of you. I promise you. Welcome back, everyone. We are back to season 8. It is such an exciting time because we are bringing you guys some new content, some new episodes, a lot of great stuff going on this season. I am really excited because today I am going to be talking to you all about something that that's been on my mind and something that we've been discussing over the last 2.5 years when I've been doing the podcast, and a topic that keeps coming up every single time that I do that I ask people, what do you guys want to know more about, or what do you want to listen more on? And this is one of those topics that keeps coming up. So welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here. I'm really happy to have you. This is a new season, season 8. We're going hard and strong, and we cannot wait to share the vibes with all of you. So today our talk will be about dating. So we are going to talk about, and we're going to cut right through the chase, and we're going to tell you what we're doing. What is it that Rusk and I think that singles should... You want to introduce? I'll do that. Yeah. What do Rusk and I think that singles should actually be doing if they want to be in a long-term relationship? And in this episode, I am joined by my husband, Rusk. Say hi.
Hello. I'm back.
You wanted to be introduced. There you go.
I just wanted to start talking.
No, we're not just talking. I'm introducing.
Right.
The question that I'm posing for everyone today is, what do you and I think that singles should actually be doing if they want to be in a long-term relationship? And we're also joined by my producer, Jamaal.
Hello.
Hey, Jamaal has been my producer for a while now. We have been working together at least 5+ years, right, Jamaal?
It's been a really long time. I'm here for emotional support. So
we feel like we've known Jamaal since he was 18.
I know.
He just got to U of H. He's what,
you know, he feels kind of like our son, right? Yeah, he's our son.
You guys been looking out
He's
for
an
me
adopted son.
He's a great guy, and he's going to bring in what I think the single
perspective.
He's dating someone now, but we've kind of known him for the most part as somebody.
Oh, and he has some single dating ideas that he wants. Definitely, I want him to join in and share with us.
For sure.
Because we know we're not single. We've been married for 22 years. Feels like, I think it was last century.
Yeah, you guys haven't been out in the trenches in quite a while.
We started dating when the internet was still in its infancy.
Yeah.
And so dating sites were...
You didn't even have an email account when we started dating.
We had flip phones.
Yeah.
Texting wasn't available. And, dating sites were half a generation away.
My God.
Right. The first thing that came up was like Match.com. And I remember that because my sister joined, I think it was like early 2000s, 2003. Yeah, something like that.
But that was still kind of, it was primitive to what's available out there today.
This episode today, I think is important because not only, number one, people are always interested in what we think or what is our advice in terms of dating, because they say, I want to know how you guys met. How did you connect? How is it that you guys make it work over the long term? You know, and it's a conversation that just keeps popping up. And as much as, gosh, I try to postpone like the dating and relationship stuff, it's something that people really want to know more about. And I think it's something that you and I can definitely contribute on and definitely talk about it. But I think today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about those things that you all put on your checklist that you want, and you want to check them all off, and you want 100% what's on your checklist. And what we're here to say is, honestly, you do not need 100% of what's on your checklist. We watched a show recently, Indian Matchmaking, and it really made us think about this topic because we have so many thoughts on this show. It really makes us think about where young people are coming from in terms of their mindset and when it comes to dating. And a lot of them want to be matched up, but when it comes to actually being matched up, so many of them have so many criteria and requirements that it makes us crazy.
Yes, it does. And so that show is really good to watch because it's the clash of really two civilizations, East and the West. And as we all know, kind of in the West, it's kind of more of like a social libertarianism, individual dating scene where romance comes first, finances come second. The emotion is there at the beginning, and in the East, it's mostly the economics, it's the goals, and the romance comes, it's secondary. And so in that Indian matchmaking, you have second and third generation Indians in this case, where they are exposed, they were raised with parents that are from India and that are trying to impose Eastern dating cultures while their kids are raised in the West. And so there's a clash. There's this conflict that's going on where they are required to check all these boxes first and the emotions coming second. But we all know it's almost impossible because the very first time you meet somebody, it's always physical and emotional before you get into the
intellectual part.
Part before you start checking all the boxes. So it makes that show interesting to watch because they're constantly in conflict. It's like a cognitive dissonance situation going on. You're being torn because you want to have somebody that's making, it's financially sound. You want to have somebody that has the same goals with kids or the same amount of kids, or they want to do great things in this world. But, you still got to see the person every day. You got to click with them and you got to be attracted to them. But that's not necessarily what they kind of want, but they don't want.
Right. So I think one of the things that we definitely looked at and considered as we were talking about this episode was the differences between what the older generations who have been married for 20, 30, 40 years, what they considered valuable characteristics in terms of like a match, and what the younger people are considering as requirements, as characteristics for something that they want in a match. And, where you and I kind of came in and we were like, we need to do an episode because what we're trying to say today and the question that we're trying to answer for you all is, you are focusing on the wrong things. You're focusing a lot on superficial things. And in order to have a long-term relationship, there's a lot of other things that are more intrinsic and that actually happen over time. They don't match up immediately on the first date. The first time you and I met, I think we met and we kind of connected mentally. You were one of those people that had 1,000 questions for me the first time we met. And you knew a little bit about me because my sister had told you about me a little bit. I think because we were all at the same school. We all were college sweethearts, so we all know each other from school. Yeah. But you kind of jumped in really strong that day, and you asked me, I think maybe 10, 15 questions.
Well, I've always believed that if you really want to get to know somebody, you got to know about them, because it's the conversation was. I remember I knew that you're an education major. We went to a small university. Everybody kind of knew each other.
St. Thomas University.
St. Thomas University. I happened to know your sister because we had the same circle of friends, and you were in grad school. I was undergrad. Alicia, for the record, is 2 years older than me. She still gets carded, and. So I knew that you're an education major, and I was an economics and finance major, and some of my courses and my material overlapped into education and public finance. So I had I was kind of prepared with the question because I knew you were coming. Veronica, our mutual friend, where we met, told me you were coming, and kind of how things went. But, you know, it was different back then.
It was different back then. So we're talking about 1998, 1999. Right. Oh, yeah, 1998. And I think one of the questions that Rusk, when I literally walked into the door and he goes, "Oh, I know you." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do." And so because my sister told him everything about me. Yeah. And so when I sat down, he literally sat down right next to me and just would not budge. Like he wanted to know everything about me, wanted to know who I was, what I was.
So just so everybody knows, here's the nerdiest pickup line. But it worked for 22 years. I knew she was an education major, and I asked her what she thought about a particular proposition in the California education system. And we haven't stopped talking since then. It was actually, I remember the day, it was September 18th, around 7 p.m., 1998. We didn't talk that next day, Saturday, but then I had called you that Sunday, which was September 20th, actually around 7 p.m. as well. And then we never stopped talking since that day. Right. And that was my pickup line. It wasn't anything, it wasn't, "Hey, you look good in those shoes," or "You look good in that hair, you're looking good these days." I figure, you know, girls are emotional, they're mental before they're physical. You got to get to them. You got to find something they like before you
jump into the hard conversations.
The hard conversation. I went straight to the hard conversations.
You know what?
I figured if you're a grad student and you're an education major, you'd appreciate a question like that, especially if you're a grad student. And you weren't a freshman or sophomore, you were way past that, and it worked.
It did. It worked because then at that time I was like, "Oh, this guy's like interested in education." And it really piqued my interest. I thought, "Oh, okay, I can definitely have a conversation with him." And there was honestly, from my end, there was no like interest yet. I think I was just meeting someone at a party and just having a conversation. But I think Rusk had another ulterior motive. He wanted to know more about me because he wanted to see if maybe I would be the kind of girl that he thought I was going to be, because I think he already had his eyes on me and wanted to kind of know a little bit more about me. But at that time, I didn't know anything about him. I had no idea. I was just kind of jumping in on the conversation with him and just going along, going with the flow. And, you know, if people these young people talk about, "Oh, I want him to be funny. I want him to be witty." He wasn't funny. He wasn't witty. He was very witty, very smart, very bright, but we didn't really laugh. We had more of like intellectual conversations at the beginning. And honestly, I think if we would have not met, mentally at that point, it could have been a problem, but I think we did right from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time we come across girls and they want a funny guy, and the funny is good, but there's serious challenges in life. Right? You want to have kids, you have a job, life is stressful. Sometimes you have things that happen to yourself. You got to be on the same mental framework, get through those challenges. And funny people, that's good. I mean, there's times to be funny, there's times to be social, there's Fridays and Saturdays, there's social hours and stuff like that, but it's not end all or be all, is he a funny guy? Because, you know, funny is not going to solve your problems.
Right.
I mean, but that is kind of the number one thing a lot of people look for.
Yes.
Like that's the end. That is the one thing that they connect with, especially on like online dating platforms. You have to be very witty to even, you know, crack the, you know, get your foot in the door. Right. If you don't have like a witty, like one-liner in your bio or have a funny picture or, you know, like you're not even being seen. Yeah. And, you know, today dating is kind of more like invisible in some ways, like in person. It's harder to like just meet people organically, like how you guys met, like that, you know. He had an in, but you guys like met organically and were able to like build something from there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, like, these days, most people tend to meet either online or at a club or at a bar, very impersonal type of things. And, you know, it's hard to really get to know somebody in those environments. But you guys had that opportunity.
Well, that still was back then. It was clubs or bars or schools or your workplace or the gym. Those are kind of the top 5 places I can think of that you had to meet somebody. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Jamaal? I think that the main issue today is that you don't have to go out of your way to meet somebody. Somebody comes right to you, and then there's so many options with dating sites. Swipe left and swipe right, and you look at somebody, they don't look good, or they don't have the criteria that you had mentioned about They got to be funny. They got to be witty just to get into the door.
Yeah.
And but there's just so much more that people can offer if you just took the time to get
to know them.
And that's what in our generation we had to get to know people. We didn't have that platform that was easily accessible to us. So we had to learn to be flexible. And I think that's the pitfall with dating sites. It brings you all these possibilities. Then because you have so many possibilities, you don't have to try very hard.
Yeah, that's not only just dating sites, but just like social media in general, right. Because nowadays everybody's life is just out in the open and you're able to see people that you know, people that you don't know, living these extravagant lives or just, you know, extravagant, interesting lives. I've known some people, me included, that, you know, it's like you might be feeling somebody on, you know, you met them at some place and then you go and check their Facebook, you check their Twitter, Instagram, and then you're like, whoa, I am out of their league, or they are living such an interesting life. How can I even measure up to that? Like, you know, sometimes like people take themselves out of the game first before they can, you know, even get a chance to get in. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with dating nowadays. I think there has to be a point where you disconnect yourself from that social. Because I do know people, like a lot of the people that were on the show, they go straight into their Instagram and they look at their photos and they're like, oh, he doesn't look like the photos on his Instagram. You know, he shows up and I'm catfish because he doesn't look that way. And I thought he was taller, more handsome.
That is like...
How often does that happen, Jamaal?
It happens a lot. I mean, there's a whole show called Catfish.
Seriously, this is almost like an epidemic or something.
No, it's a whole thing, and it's like, you know, my roommate / friend, he had a whole thing where it's like he would match with somebody on a dating app and then immediately go into reconnaissance mode, like go find their Instagram, find their Twitter, like are these pictures actually representative of, you know, like what they had on their dating profile? Is that what is in real life? How are they living? What is their career? Mm-hmm. Because also that's like, if they don't tell you that on the dating app, let's say you're able to bring all of that like on the first date, like when you actually meet them.
Information overload, I think it is. And I think it overstimulates and it overcompensates for the things that the people are looking for. And so if you're seeing somebody and you're like, oh, she's way out of my league, she looks really cute in that photo, and there's no way I could ever be with her. You're thinking already, you've already taken yourself out of the game. You've already determined that she's not worthy of you. You're not worthy of her. You can't make it work. There's no way I can be with her. Look at the travel she does. Look at where she's, you know, going to eat. I could never take her to a restaurant like that. And I think that is the worst thing you can do, because a lot of times what we're posting on social media isn't the greedy. It's the beautiful, the most wonderful parts about it. It's
always the best parts of your life.
It's always the best parts, no matter what. And no matter if people be vulnerable on social media, you're not going to be completely vulnerable, because nobody wants to see somebody crying and hysterical and shitty and like in the worst circumstances. Nobody wants to see that on social media. You're not going to be followed if that's the person you are. Yeah. But I think in terms of like, you know, going back to the topic, we were looking at, you know, well, so many youngsters, so many younger people are looking, and it's not even that young, 30s and 40s. They are looking at things that, to me and to Rusk, for both of us, are seemingly so superficial that really don't lead to like values that really work in a long-term relationship.
No, they don't. They don't translate into anything productive. I mean, it's just too rigid. Like
it's rigid.
The other day we were talking to some friend, and there was a checklist of gotta have a master's degree, gotta have a PhD, gotta be able to. They have to travel. They not only have to travel, but I need them to climb a mountain. They got to be very active, physically active, and they got to have a successful business. And that is a lot to ask for in somebody. Why can't it just be a successful business and a nice guy, and then maybe over time,
yes.
You know, maybe this guy wants to, he's into traveling, but he doesn't necessarily want to climb a volcano. And maybe you can convince him to do a volcano, and then over time, you'll do something that he wants to do. And that's the essence of a relationship. Yeah. That's the essence of, I know this is a cerebral word, procure a relationship, is that you want to grow together. You want to do things where you learn from another person. You don't want a person exactly like yourself, because if you are the type of person that is a go-getter, that is an achiever, that wants to better themselves every single day, be a little bit better than they were before, then you have to understand that you can't, you don't want to find somebody exactly like yourself, because then there's no growth there. If you find somebody with a different experience, with a different culture, with a different background, you still get to learn from that person, because they have a lot to attribute to society, to the relationship, to you personally.
But I think a lot of people aren't looking for that growth. They're just looking for somebody that they could be with, either to date or,
Right.
like, they already have that checklist of, oh, he needs to have a master's and he needs to be a CEO and he's making like 6+ figures or whatever. There is no growth. I mean, there is, but there really isn't a lot of growth after that. They expect you to be ready and like, okay, like now our lives can start together. And I don't know if that really works out in terms of,
But why is that? Why has it changed? It's the other day, and we were talking about this before the podcast. Sociologists reporting on I was reading an article in Financial Times. Marital rates are dropping.
Birth rates
are dropping, and it's not there. But the thing is, that's okay if you just want to date and you don't want to have a long-term relationship. That's the great thing about living in the West, not necessarily in the East. Living in the West is that you don't have to commit yourself, because no one's really, it's not frowned upon. It's not forced on you. It is kind of forced by some parents that do want to have grandkids, but not to the intensity as it is in other parts of the world. And okay, you don't want to have a relationship, but the next thing that's coming out of their mouths is, I want to get married. I want to have kids. But they're not doing what it takes to get there. Why is that, Jamaal?
What I think of a lot is my friend, and she just has a giant checklist of things that they need to have, like when they go into a relationship. Nothing's ever good enough. Nothing's ever good enough. Nothing will ever like really check off all the boxes. Or if they do, like as soon as like one thing comes off, it's like completely, like the relationship is completely invalid. Like she went into a relationship. I'm just thinking of my friend. She went into a relationship with a guy and they hit it off really well. I thought it was toxic as fuck, but they hit it off really well. And a couple months later, she found out that he wanted to have kids. Like that was her whole thing. Like, yes, they want to have kids, but his timetable and her timetable didn't match at all. And that was like the immediate deal breaker, instead of like talking through it, or like maybe, just considering like, yeah, maybe it'll be better later on, or like,
I think that's the point. The point is younger people are not committed to being flexible and saying, you know what, maybe I can change a little bit about who I am, a little bit about my rigidity, and not be so obsessed on having certain things happen at the time that I need them to be. And I think that's the problem with her. It's like maybe the timeline wasn't the same in terms of birth.
The timeline wasn't the same. Yeah. Like, because she was like, yo, let's have, like, if
she wanted them now.
Like, pretty much within the, like, next 2 years or so.
But Jamaal, that's also biological, because women also have to have kids
100%
by a certain.
But as like in his position, he's not necessarily constrained by those restrictions. Like he doesn't necessarily have the biological clock that a lot of women are concerned about. So when his timetable was like another 10 years,
right? Okay. Friends, I want you to meet my favorite bilingual realtor, Elmer Garcia. You all know that a passion of mine is real estate investing, and having a great realtor by your side is essential. Elmer knows the city of Houston like the back of his hand, and not only is he highly regarded by his clients, but also by the professionals in his field. I can tell you from experience that he is attentive, trustworthy, thorough, and detail-oriented. He knows what I like, y'all, and seeks out opportunities for finding the right property for me. His services range from residential real estate to commercial and investment. He will guide you the entire way, I can tell you that. You can email him at elmerg.realtor@gmail.com or call him at 512-5752, or you can also find him on Instagram, Elmer_Garcia_real estate. And don't forget, anything real estate is his forte.
It was a little different.
It sounds like it's so tough out there.
It is, but can I just say this real quick before we get into the next topic? I think it's so important that when you do find someone that you love and you're connected with them and everything else about the relationship is great, maybe that one part isn't. I think one thing that we've discovered over 22 years of marriage is that Rusk will give in to something that I want, and I will give in to something that he wants. Even if the timeline isn't great for him, but if he loves her, he will jump in on that timeline for her. That's really the difference. I think we make sacrifices, we make adjustments, we compromise through a relationship to make each other happy.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, marriage is like a job. It's like anything else you do. It's like going to the gym. It's like trying to perform at something that you are required to perform at and be good at it. No one tells you have to be married, but you got to be good at your job. Otherwise, you're going to get let go, right? Somebody's going to replace you that can do a better job. And marriage is a job, and it's a different kind of job. And why not be good at it? You go to work and you want to be good at your job. So the only way you're going to be good at trying to make a relationship work is you got to be flexible, you got to compromise,
tolerant.
You got to tolerate, and you got to communicate.
And I think people will say, like people who are listening to the episode right now, they're like, gosh, you're taking the romanticism out of it. The romantic component comes later as you guys achieve some sort of stability. I think they say, God, you're like taking out the happy, the good, the fun. All you're saying is you got to compromise.
That's compromising is later on. I think the romanticism should be there at the beginning. What we're learning from the show is, particularly in the Eastern cultures, there is no romanticism. It's all cerebral, all very perfunctory process that they have to get there, and then maybe the romanticism will work out.
Yes.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yes.
Romanticism has to be there from the beginning, and there may not be anything else that's going on initially, mentally, in a relationship. But if the romanticism is there at the beginning, you may be able to find the rest of it going. If you got one thing going for you, work on that one thing, and then see if you can get the other things to go for you as well.
And they take time. What I think what we're realizing with young people who are out dating, I think they want that checklist to be checked off right from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, but that also, like, I feel like it comes with like economic uncertainty or just uncertainty in general, where you have to spend a really long time to kind of build your career or build kind of a base to be successful or to have like a family. It's hard to be working at in between jobs. If you're working at McDonald's, or it's like she's also not establishing her career, and then you guys want to have kids, like it's a really tough place to be. So I feel like a lot of people either wait or they just hope that their significant other already has that established. In that way they can grow later. But then that also means the relationships tend to grow together later. Yeah. But like they're trying to grow together in different ways because they feel that they're already established in their career and personal lives. And like they want to just fully focus on a relationship, possibly.
Yeah, what I hear a lot from is almost reminds me of a college syllabus. It's like, this is chapter 1, and this is chapter 2, this is chapter 3, and then you're going to go down. I'm going to get married, and then we're going to travel, and then we're going to have kids, and then our jobs are going to be this. And I'm like, it doesn't always, there's a lot of obstacles that come into this world. What if you can't get pregnant? What if you have some biological issues with that? That doesn't work out. How are you guys going to take on that challenge and face it together? And that's, a lot of the time, relationships fall apart when it comes to that because they didn't have what it took in the beginning, that flexibility, working and growing together. It's an obstacle, we're going to find a way around it. People just kind of give up on it because they think that it's just going to work out for them. And you can't think this is going to work out unless you don't have the preconditions to think that you're flexible from the beginning. And if you're flexible from the beginning, then you can find somebody to have a relationship with. You have these predetermined ideas of what this relationship would be, and then you have a kink in the road somewhere because you're going to have a kink in the road. How are you going to handle that kink? The the predisposition for handling that kink has to be there from the beginning.
Yeah, and I see what Jamaal is also saying. I think Jamaal is also saying that there's generational differences in terms of how we grew up when we were Gen Xers and the way the millennials and Gen Zs are growing up now, and the different circumstances in terms of job opportunities, in terms of housing opportunities, in terms of like what, you know, the job is giving, is providing at this point, the way that people are growing. I think a lot of younger people are really making time for themselves. They are more in tune with their self-care. They're more in tune with getting therapy. I think when we were growing up, we were told, like, you go to work and you shut up and you don't say anything and you keep grinding and grinding and grinding.
Therapy was taboo.
And yeah, and back then, we didn't do that. And I think that's a great thing for young people to have. And that's a great opportunity that I think we missed out on, that we didn't have those things. But at the same time, I think overthinking and overanalyzing one relationship, one meetup with someone can really derail a relationship that can have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I have experience with this because typically when I'm even thinking about a potential relationship, I have like a lot of big questions on my mind. Like, oh, like what is it going to be like with her family, or what is it going to be like for us, you know, in the future? Where are we going to live? Or, you know, does she want kids and all that stuff?
Yeah.
But a lot of time, you know, like you kind of just have to, you know, go out on a limb and just go with it. And just, you know, like those questions will come up. But I guess if you're like committed to the relationship, you guys will tackle them together.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And you gotta tackle them together.
Yes. Right? You tackle them together.
You got to work. If you like somebody and you have a few things in common, work on those things that you have in common, and work in what you don't have in common or it's not jiving. You guys, if there's flexibility, you can eventually find your way that you can satisfy both partners, you know, years down the road.
And those questions, Jamaal, I think those are questions that younger people are asking themselves a lot. And I think a lot of those answers are not there yet. And I think they are stopping themselves from pursuing a relationship because those answers are not there for them. And I think what they need to realize, and this is the advice that we are trying to give you guys, is that you don't have to have those answers from the beginning. Those are answers that can come along the way and that can be tackled as a partner, that can be tackled as a relationship. Those are things that when love is there and you love someone and you are committed to the relationship, those issues, whatever it is, whether it's where we're going to live, you know, where are we going to raise our kids, those are going to be issues that are going to be dealt with in a more mature way, in a synergy, with a synergy between the two people.
So, Jamaal, in your generation, I know I read about this a lot, and even in my son's generation, it's hard to find decent work. It's hard to find wages that are livable wages. And how much of that, your experience in dating, that play a role in finding somebody? Because ultimately they say finances isn't important, but finances is important. Money has to kind of be there. There has to be some level of comfort. You don't have to worry about that, because otherwise if you're living from paycheck to paycheck, then it becomes very stressful. You can't focus on the relationship. There
are a lot of changing mindsets in terms of, you know, women like in the workforce and like what is their you know, how do they contribute to relationships, like typically towards the end of marriage? Like, for example, like how typical was it for the man to be the breadwinner and the provider, and, you know, he pays for everything? Like, there are still people that think like that. So that's part of things that, you know, people have to deal with. But you know, talking as somebody that hasn't had his life put together for a while, it's challenging when you're dating somebody and, you know, it's like, sure, you can go to a restaurant or you can go and do these things, but like over time, it gets really expensive. It costs a lot of money. And then like after a while, you spend more time, you know, together by yourselves. And you have to learn how to make fun with yourselves or be able to like just do things that don't require a lot of money. And that can be challenging. Like if you love to go out to museums or go to eat at the fanciest restaurants, well, it's, you know, if I can't do that.
Right. But there's also the pressure that you see other people doing it. So there's a lot of FOMO that goes on, right? There's a lot of like, oh, well, they just went there. Why can't we go there?
Yeah. And that's rough.
Right. And I think that's a good point that you're making. I think there's the pressure to have everything settled and done and realized. But I think in terms of when it comes to finding someone when you're dating and you're discovering yourself and you're going out there, I think, I go back to what Seema said. If you get 60 to 70% of what's on your checklist, you're doing good. Right. And a lot of people refuse that. A lot of women that are high achieving women will say, no, I want 100%. I deserve 100%. I'm 100% of a person. And I think that's counterproductive. That isn't helpful to you. I am a high achieving woman, but that doesn't mean that I cannot compromise because my husband doesn't, meet certain things. I love to dance, Jamaal. I'm a dancer, and Rusk doesn't dance. I wasn't going to kick him out the curb just because he doesn't go dancing with me, even though that's a big part of my life. Like, I would dance all the time. We go dance. I used to go dancing like every.
It was part of you.
It was part of my culture, where I grew up, my upbringing, exactly. And so other women, younger women, would be like, no, that's no way. There's no way. Like, how am I going to be dating a guy who doesn't like to dance? But guess what? He will join me at a club and just sit there and have a drink and be happy for me because I'm dancing. He will take me home and he would be in the car. He's like, you have fun. I said, I had so much fun. But it's again, don't throw away someone because they don't meet all the freaking expectations.
So, but the question I had is, if they want 100%, how's that working out for them?
I guess it's not.
Yeah, because in the mid-30s, most of these women on the show, or guys, who haven't found anybody.
It's not working for them.
But if they're high-achieving women and they're highly educated women, and part of having an education is to be able to think on a deeper level, why are they not checking themselves and realizing, not what I'm doing is not working, I have to do something else?
Yeah. It's really tough to find like a really nice balance. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine where she, she's like, I work, 60 hours a week. I make my own money. She has her own place. Like, what does she need a guy for? Or if a guy is going to be there, like, what is enriching her life? Like, how can, and she really wants somebody to pamper her. Like, she's like, okay, if I'm working really hard, I need somebody to come home and like rub my toes or go and grab all the groceries. Yeah,
set up a nice bath for me.
Yeah. Like that is something that she needs. I don't know if it's realistic. I don't know if that's something that people are like super like into, or if that is like her end all be all. But I do feel that is going to be an obstacle for her, like over time, because not everybody's into that. Like,
no, but not only are they not into that, but they can be into it as time goes on, and you talk about the things that you enjoy and you want done for you. There's things that, when we first got married, we didn't know about each other. And I think 2, 3, 4 years along the way, we discovered things about each other that were, just they could have been deal breakers.
20 years later, I'm still learning things you never cease to surprise or amaze.
So
there's always something new.
You better not say what it is. I'll kill you.
But, that's the great thing about a relationship, is you discover things new, and it kind of always keeps it fresh.
Yeah, but I think in terms of like the things that connected us were like big values. Big values. We talked about religion right from the start. We talked about family right from the start. We talked about parenting styles and what we thought about that. Fine. We matched, but we were not completely matched 100% on everything.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, we weren't. But I'm saying we talked about those things, but we were not 100%.
Right, we're not 100%.
No.
We weren't 100% lined on a lot of those things. We found a middle-of-the-road approach to address them.
One thing that in our relationship that always pops up is money, because I grew up very, very poor. So the hangups that I have about money, the way that I spend my money, the way that I behave around money is very different from what he has. So that's always been an adjustment for us for the last 22 years, adjusting that mentality, because I still kind of bring that baggage of how I was raised. But along the way, Rusk has taken, has been able to manage that and realize, I'm extremely frugal. I'm extremely resourceful in those years where we were growing, the first 10, 15 years where we were really growing and like pushing hard on like what we wanted for ourselves. That was when I my instinct as a saver, man, that like really came in handy, because we were super savers at that time. We were like really intense about making sure that we had what we needed in the long term.
Jamaal, when you're out there dating, how often do you see people put up an armor, put up a shield, to where they don't really want you to get to know them?
I mean, I could include myself. I can include myself in that. Like, yeah, it happens. Like,
what's the underlying? I know this is probably a deep psychological question, but what I don't know. I'm an easy to get to know person. I can be temperamental. I get frustrated really quick, intense. I can be demanding, but in most situations throughout the day, I can make friends pretty easily. I'm kind of an open book. I let people ask me questions. I really don't withhold information back. But I think a lot of time, particularly in this Indian Matchmaking show, there's a few participants on there, and they put up this like Great Wall of China kind of armor, and you really got to spend time and energy. And I think that's a turnoff.
Yeah, I think that appears a lot, especially in online dating, where that first date you try to present the best version of yourself. I feel like that is a really bad way to date because if you start that way and then, it falls away later and they're going to be like, what happened? For me specifically, when it comes to other people getting to know me, the wall is high because I've had a lot of, that's a lot of traumas and a lot of, a lot of self-reflection on, do people really want to get to know me? How transactional is this relationship? What are the goals of this relationship? And so like ultimately when I had those kinds of like dates, I kept it very surface level and they didn't get to know me, and maybe it didn't work out because of that. But I mean, it also happens both ways. I've definitely seen it's, hey, let's go to a bar and then just drink the night away. Don't really talk about anything substantial or of substance. It goes like, it can be hard to break through for me, especially. But it can be hard in general. Like I always keep going back to online dating. It's so impersonal. The amount of, for women, the amount of men, I think they were saying it's like, on most dating apps, women are outnumbered something like 8-1, like 8 guys to 1 girl. So
what?
It's really high.
I thought it was the other way.
No.
Wow.
There are way more guys than there are girls. And so when there's
sense, most guys are
yeah. And so when there's so many guys
out there.
When there's so many guys, it's so easy to, be able to swipe left or right. So girls can choose, like what is their fancy, and like, I had months where I'd swipe and I wouldn't like get one match, or I maybe get like 2 or 3. And then I'm talking to my female friends and they're like, yeah, I had like 10 matches today. And I had 10 matches today, and one of them just sent me a dick pic. So annoying. Like the filter that they have to go through from the jump is enormous. So like that's a really big part. So it's like once you like pretty much you're tearing down walls from the jump, like when it comes to online dating, like you're trying to get past the surface level, like, hey, how are you doing? Or what are you into?
Right.
Like, yeah, I see it a lot of conversations where they would say, hi and good morning. That's not good enough. Like, what else are you bringing to the table? Like, how well are you going to get to know me? And if you get to know me well enough, then maybe we'll go on a date and meet up in person. So it's really hard to break through when it comes to online dating, when it comes to me. Like it's a challenge that I think a lot of single people these days either don't know how to do, or they just
Well, what if they let go of all those barriers? What if they did not allow those barriers to interfere with their dating?
When that happens, in my friend's experience, is they like, if they let those barriers go away, then all of a sudden they meet up with a guy and then he sexually assaults her, or he's a gigantic douchebag, like, you know, and you know, it's a safety issue for women, especially. Like I really like empathize.
Right,
so
right.
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot harder for guys to break through that barrier.
Is there anything online, any kind of review about date?
Like you can like review like a guy, like, hey, this guy.
Yeah, like give him a 1 star.
Yeah, he's like a 1 star.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it. No, I don't think
I know that sounds probably like a ridiculous question, but I've never looked at a dating site. Obviously, I have no reason to. But I mean,
you can obviously report somebody. Like if they do something bad, then you can report them. You can get their account banned. But in general,
I guess that would be the demise of a dating site if you could review people. People would just fall off the radar.
Yeah.
That would be the end.
Yeah, and there's a lot of revenge sites too, where people, you know, do revenge.
Right. So there's no 1 star. That guy, that girl.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
She's a complete bitch or something like that.
Well, that would probably be terrible too. Like I can imagine like that. That's just like another thing on the internet.
Thread or there's no chat site or something.
No. Everybody's a blank slate when you first meet them.
Blank slate.
Yeah. I mean, like the biggest trail you have when it comes to dating and anything is just what you put out there on the internet. And the internet's forever. So like if you want to do the research and reconnaissance like my other friend would do, and you know, maybe he would find out at first that it's not worth dating this one person. But in general, like I was saying, when I think about my women friends, when she just went, oh man, I just got an unsolicited dick pic, and I'm like, are you gonna do anything about that? She's like, no, just block them and move on. Like it's too much.
I think it's because it happens so much. It's just like, it's another day.
Yeah, really boggles my mind.
So let's go back to the topic and let's finish this up with what are we seeing as ourselves, you and I, for 22 years, are the long-term values that people should be really looking at and focusing on instead of all the other stuff?
No, I wouldn't. I don't want to pause it on what our values are and impose it upon other people or suggest it.
Okay, well, what suggestions can you?
I'm just going to go back. I just think that people shouldn't have an armor when they meet somebody. I think that mainly is a turn off because if you want to meet somebody, you got to get to know them. And if you're not allowing people to get to know you, then you can't.
You can't expect them to like you or like take it to the next level.
And the other thing is the same thing I've had with so many people I've met over the last 5 years since I've left the shop that are single. Is that there's just a lack of flexibility. I think it's the checklist thing. It goes back to what we were talking about. It's the essence of why there is matchmaking shows on TV, because people can't find anybody, and it's the same consistent message over and over and over, is that there's so many rigidities, so many requirements that people are looking for, and they just won't budge on it. And it's just mind-boggling to me because you're not looking for somebody like yourself. And why would you? Why would you look for somebody identical to yourself? It's like, I don't know. It's almost like dating your sister or your brother. Yeah.
And I think what's brought us together is our differences too. I mean, there are mutual values that are really, really important to both of us. Well, that we don't budge, we won't budge on, and as much as other people would say, "Oh, you shouldn't have that," I don't know. Would you budge on something the big values?
Our value was we're not religiously fervent people. I'm an atheist. I don't really believe in any kind of superficial, supernatural.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of books on religious history. It's all, but I do understand why people adhere to that. I understand why people are religious. I understand people have trauma, and religion helps them with that. Right? And if they don't have trauma, they want to find somebody that's a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu. I have no issues with that. That's one of our values. Another value is that we wanted to raise our kids in a very practical sense, not overwhelm them, let them have a childhood, not do too many activities at once, let them grow on their own. Let's nurture their strengths. Let's work on their weaknesses. But not focus too much on their weaknesses, expecting our kids to be perfect. You know, let them kind of guide themselves in this world and find what they are passionate about, and then kind of, be on the edges and let them know that there's rules, there's boundaries, there's, certain things you have to do in certain situations, but not micromanage your kids. I think a lot of parents, what I see, are micromanaging their kids. They're bulldozing their kids through school. They want them to be superstar athletes. They want to be stellar students. And, we have an older son that he's not a great student, but he's great at what he's doing now. We have a younger son that's a great student, but we don't know how they're all going to turn out, right?
Right. But I think the key is that you and I agreed on this structure for ourselves.
Yeah,
we agreed on this philosophy for ourselves.
But that's not the philosophy for other people.
Right. But what I'm trying to say is for people to be able to have a relationship, there has to be commonalities on those philosophies, especially the big philosophies.
But it doesn't have to be 100%.
It doesn't have to be 100%. It does not have to be 100%. I think 60, 70%, like Seema said, is great. Enough, right? I think so. Because the other 30% or the other 20% grows over time.
A Catholic can get along with a Christian. An Orthodox Jew can get along with a secular Jew. Right? Secular Muslim can get along with the...
I mean, I'm not marrying a Republican. There's no freaking way that's happening. But that would be...
That's you, but we've actually known relationships that are fervent Republicans and fervent Democrats. But there's what you want to ask that question is what else is working for you to overlook something that's typically important to people's or politics.
There's an overachieving, there's an umbrella value system that they're adhering to. And I think that's a beautiful thing too.
And that's a good example to take from is to get with those people and find out what's working when something that's so important to people that they're still finding a way to make it work. I think they're a good example of that.
I love that. That's a great way to end this episode.
Yeah, ultimately just be able to find somebody that you can agree on, at least for the very fundamental parts of the basis of the relationship. And then you go from there. Like, sure, there might be things that you might disagree on, or you might, you might have a challenge trying to figure out. But, if that base is solid, you have room to learn and to be able to figure out all those other things. But, you have to be willing to...
You have to be willing. That's the key word.
Yeah, you have to be willing to do that. Right?
But a lot of people, I don't think they're willing. I think they just want the easy pass, and that's not how things work.
So thank you so much for the conversation. We had a great talk. I think this is a good conversation to have, especially as so many people out there are looking for a partner, looking for partnership, looking for someone to experience life with. I think that's the beautiful part, is that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to experience life with someone else, to kind of come along with you on those journeys, on those special moments. You always want to share those things with someone. But if this episode is something that's interesting to you, is something that that you found specifically helpful, that you thought, wow, that comment is great, please let us know. You can always send us a DM, Advised by Alicia, on my Instagram. I also want you to know that you can reach me at my personal account. You can reach me through my website, tbbyalicia.com. You are definitely someone that I care about, and I want to know more about what you're thinking. I want your feedback on, did you think this episode touched upon those things that you felt were strong, or should we, hone in on something else that you think is important? But before I go, I want to just remind you all that we do have a patrons opportunity for you all, something called the Vibes Global Insider. And what you can be is an insider, and you can come and support our podcast, keep it thriving, keep it moving forward. You can join our subscriber community. We created education. We created experiences for you. We have speakers, resources. You can get a shout out on the podcast. You can also be a part of our workshops. Don't forget, if you go to the website, tbbyalicia.com, you can be inspired. You can come in and look at what we're doing in terms of our community with the Vibes Global Insiders, and you will get one-on-one chats with me every month. And it could be about anything. It could be about anything you want it to be. Let's get vibing. Join in. If you want more information, it's definitely going to be on the description. And I just want to say thank you to my guest, Jamaal. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
One of the younger generation.
I love it. I love it. Jamal, how are you?
How? Oh, 30. I forget my age. So
are you a millennial?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Love that. We have a millennial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like right in the middle.
We love our millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love our Gen Zers. We love all of them. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Give us the feedback. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.